Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Lost in Science, where it is science, it is something to get lost in, to, drift away and let your mind wander and think about, the universe, the meaning of it all, how it all works, anything like that. Something to ponder as we talk to Claire and Stu about their science stories they have brought in. Claire,
hello,
what have you
Chris.
got for us this week?
Well, this week I am speaking to a special guest about vaccines.
Oh, topical.
It is topical, isn't it? But Chris, this isn't human vaccines for COVID like we've been speaking about for what seems like a long time. This is koala vaccines for a disease that is threatening koala populations. I don't know if you've heard, but koalas get chlamydia. Did you know that?
I had heard that.
Yeah.
I don't like to think about that
No.
too much. Maybe this is not the story for people to get lost in and drift away and their minds wander and think about. But I guess we have to face up the reality of koalas
and chlamydia, and
it
has some really, really negative effects on population and their fertility and the longevity of the species, which has been put at huge risk and been threatened even more from the bushfires over the past couple of years. But some very clever scientists and our guest today, Professor Peter Timms from the University of the Sunshine Coast, have developed a vaccine for chlamydia that is in its phase 3 trials, specifically for koalas, but that doesn't mean that there won't in the future be a vaccine for chlamydia in humans as well.
I kind of like the idea that they've enrolled a whole bunch of koalas in this trial and some of them are getting a placebo and then presumably, koala populations aren't huge, presumably once they're finished they just then vaccinate the placebo people and they're done.
Yeah. Presumably, it's fascinating and really interesting as well because chlamydia is a bacteria. But antibiotics don't work in the same way in koalas as they do in humans. So some very, very interesting stories, and had a really interesting chat with Peter about that.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that. Stu, can you compete with that?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I can compete with STIs in koalas, but I will mention STIs in my story, but probably not for the reason you think. I'm going to be talking about celebrating science and, that we should have more days put aside for the celebration of science and the promotion of science and the discussion of science and all of these things. And there is a day coming up.
What?
In the next couple of weeks,
yeah,
that is all about talking about and promoting and celebrating science. And it may be a day that a lot of us have never heard about, even though it's a world day.
Wow. I thought National Science Week was the biggest science event on the calendar for us.
Well, you were wrong. But I won't give too much away. You'll have to stay tuned and listen to the story and find out what am I talking about. And also, while you're there, mark November 10th on your calendar.
Remember the 10th of November, as the saying goes. Well, look, I don't know. I think we talk about science a lot anyway, so even if we don't know about this particular special day, we're pretty much covered, I imagine.
Well, yes. If you tune into Lost in Science every week has a day devoted to science just for you. So
there you go. Problem solved. Tick. Okay, well, I look forward to finding out Stu's justification for this this whole other side of things. On with the show.
There are many threats facing koalas in Australia right now, but did you know that one of the biggest threats is chlamydia, with this disease affecting around 50% of some populations of koalas? Now, this week there has been some very promising research published in the development of a vaccine for koala chlamydia. And to chat more about it, we have Professor of Microbiology, Peter Timms from the University of the Sunshine Coast. Peter, welcome to Lost in Science.
Thanks, Claire. Happy to be here.
Now, Peter, from a microbiological point of view, what is chlamydia?
Yeah, so chlamydia is a bacterium, a small bacterium that infects not only koalas, it infects humans, of course. It's a pretty important disease in humans, other animals, but koalas, it's really causing a bit of an issue there.
Right. And talking about the koala population, how does it affect the koala population?
Yeah, it's pretty widespread. It's present at higher levels in Queensland and New South Wales by and large. It infects small koalas there, and it seems to cause more disease there. We're not too sure why that's the case. Plenty of studies going to see whether there's different strains and so on. Victoria also has more than its share of chlamydial disease, perhaps not quite as severe as other states, and indeed South Australia as well. What does it do? So it's basically a sexually transmitted disease, although it's highly transmitted from mother to young as well. We can talk about why that's the case. So as a sexually transmitted disease, it affects both males and females, but particularly it's the females that matter. It causes urinary infections, and that leads to things like urinary incontinence. So the term wet bottom is due to chlamydia. But it also causes large cysts, so they're quite painful in the animals. In fact, when some of the animals with cysts actually cry when they're urinating, that's sort of level of pain. But it also causes reproductive tract blockages. So the end result is that mothers are not able to have baby koalas as easily. So the reproduction rate of populations decreases. That's the main problem. But it also causes eye infections, the same as Chlamydia trachomatis causes trachoma in humans. So in koalas, it causes conjunctivitis that can lead to eventual scarring. The eyelids turn in and scar the eyes. So in that case, the animals become literally blind. Not as common and perhaps not as important, but of course it affects their feeding and so on. So the two of them combined, pretty important disease in koalas across Australia.
So, I mean, it sounds like an incredibly nasty disease. And if, it's a sexually transmitted disease, but as you say, it also can be transmitted from mother to baby as well.
Yeah, it is. A mother to baby one, people probably don't think about this, but koalas have a specialized level of bacteria in their gut. They need that to digest the eucalyptus leaves. And so the mothers actually purposely regurgitate some of their contents and spit it out and give it to their babies.
Right.
Which makes sense, but at the same time, they're probably giving them chlamydia as well. So that's why there's a high transmission to baby koalas as well. So, all of that together. And I'll just mention briefly about antibiotics. So antibiotics, we know in humans that there's an antibiotic that kills chlamydia. The problem in koalas is twofold. The koala is eating eucalyptus leaves, and that's got lots of toxins in it. And so its liver actually has developed so that it's designed to produce more enzymes to break down those nasty toxins, which is good. But when we give it antibiotics, it breaks them down as well. And so in humans, we might give antibiotics for as short as 1 day, some of the tablets we give, but certainly just a few days. In koalas, because of that, we have to give koalas antibiotics daily, sometimes ending up to 4 weeks of it. Ridiculously length of time, and that results in their gut bacteria being basically destroyed or severely affected. So antibiotics per se are not an ideal treatment for chlamydia in koalas, and that has led us to the interest in the vaccine.
And what do we know about why chlamydia has taken hold of koala populations, with such fervour over the last little while? Is it a combination of factors and all the other threats that koalas are facing, or?
Yeah, I think the answer is we don't absolutely know. But what we do see is other threats, environmental threats, bushfires a little bit, but also other things that might be causing climate change or a problem to us. But as well as that, there's probably other things that are affecting the situation, and droughts and so on, all of these things, and also then urban development as we keep building roads, shopping centres, all those things. All those things seem to result in stress, and that is just one additional factor combined with chlamydial disease. So there's a few examples, and I'll just use one in northern New South Wales I'm sort of loosely aware of, where 7-8 years ago, there was a population that seemed to be going along quite well. Its numbers were probably increasing. Most females were having babies. And then chlamydia seems to have moved into that population. And now there's 50, 60, 70% infection levels. And the number of babies is very, very low now. So that's just what it can do in a relatively short period of time. It's possible to turn it around. There's another population in southeast Queensland we've been studying where they were on a downhill slope again, and the veterinary team, involving us from a vaccine point of view, but also other veterinary measures, was able to turn that population around so it goes up again. So I think the answer is populations on their own are not able to survive what is an increasing chlamydia epidemic, I guess.
Right. Well, that brings us to a good point to talk about the research that you're involved in to develop a vaccine for chlamydia in koalas. Like you say, antibiotics. It's not an appropriate way to deal with this disease like it is in humans. So going with a vaccine and developing a vaccine seemed to be the way to go. Can you talk us through what that's looked like, what the development of a vaccine for koala chlamydia has looked like?
Yeah, sure. We've been interested in begun developing a koala chlamydia vaccine for more than 10 years now. I have some interest in human chlamydia vaccines as well, but we saw the opportunity as we were studying chlamydial disease to look at a chlamydial vaccine in koalas as well. And so we've been able to work in koalas across, I think it's 8 different mini trials, control ones in koalas, and some of them are in places like koala sanctuaries where there's no chlamydia, so we're just measuring response to vaccination, immune response. Then we've been able to do it in some wild koalas that come into hospitals, and then indeed we've done it in a couple of wild populations where the koalas themselves have got radio collars on them. So we've been able to work with the group there to vaccinate and follow them every 6 months to see under the natural conditions. And that's led us to see that we see that the vaccine is safe. We've done 250 koalas now that we've monitored them quite closely. That's safe. We see a reduction in infectious disease, and the chlamydia stuff in koalas is, amazingly similar in many respects to the COVID vaccine we all hear about every other day now. So the infection level in koalas is reduced. Separate to that, we also see a reduction in animals going on to get disease. And we did one nice trial that took the vaccine and we gave it to animals that already had disease. We did this with ocular disease from an ethics point of view. In that case, 80% of the koalas at least were able to reduce their disease, and they actually were cured of disease, so they were able to be released. So all of those things have told us that we think the vaccine, well, not 100% perfect, but pretty good. And so our phase right now, we'll continue to do basic research as we need to do, but we're ready to roll the vaccine out, so to speak, in its current format to a range of populations, starting first of all with these wildlife hospitals, because those animals are coming in, they're already there, they've already got other challenges, and so we're going to be able to vaccinate hundreds and getting towards 1,000 koalas, hopefully in the next 6 months. So that's where we're at.
Incredible. It sounds like they are, incredibly promising results for, what I imagine would be quite a lot of work in quite a lot of groups across the last 10 years.
Yeah, it is. And it's a project that's here at the university, we're an important part of it. But the veterinarians are both at wildlife hospitals, particularly Australian Zoo Wildlife Hospital, but lots of others as well. There's lots of hospitals that have been part of it all. And our field team, or not my field team, but there's a strong field team of veterinarians. And of course, all the other groups that have been helping us in all different ways, including lots of community groups and so on. It's all been part of a bigger program that we've reached at where we are now. So couldn't have done it on our own, but obviously the basic research is an important part as well.
So in your opinion, Peter, what are, I guess, the biggest challenges that the research faces moving into the next phase?
Yeah, there's a couple of things, I guess. One of which is, as good as the vaccine is, it's still a research type vaccine. So we'll be using that and we'll be improving the quality of it. Not that it's poor quality, but we just need to keep improving and improving and improving. So we'll be doing that as we move through these rollout trials. But the parallel phase is we need to move it through an actual vaccine production where a company needs to take this on board and we need to get it approved by the veterinary authorities. Those steps, perhaps surprisingly, are nearly as rigorous as human vaccine steps are. They're very high standards, as they should be. So that's one of our challenges at the moment, to do that part of the process, all the paperwork and approvals and so on. The second part, I guess, as relates to the rollout phase, is we can roll it out in these wildlife hospitals, which, as I mentioned, we're in 400 koalas in this Australia Zoo Wildlife Hospital, but also in there's 2 other wildlife hospitals. We hope to start within 3 months, so that'll bring the numbers up over 1,000. That's Queensland. We've already started talking to groups in New South Wales as well, so we've got strong support for that. But then we need to move it out into wild populations, of course. Even though thousands of wildlife hospital koalas need to be helped, that's good. It's a good place to start, but also to do it in a broader population. So we just see that happening in stages. Some people ask me, how will I vaccinate the last koala and the last tree? And the answer is, I'm not trying to do that. We're trying to do the animals that probably need help with their chlamydia disease because they've got other threats as well. So, and we see that happening in the next few years, and then who knows what might happen at that stage.
So, Peter, I'm sure all of our listeners, everyone loves koalas. How can people listening help this cause?
Yeah, well, thanks. I think there's probably 2 levels they can do that. At the first level, the community groups. There are lots of community groups that help us right now. In fact, the community groups and koala carers, which are out there everywhere, are bringing these koalas into these wildlife hospitals. So, they may well be able to become part of that project. Secondly, of course, is the cost of research and all the cost of doing these rollouts. It's all expensive, and I'm sure people appreciate that. The field trials are literally hundreds of thousands of dollars each time in this next process. So, we're hoping that there might be somebody out there that's got some spare money, or some entrepreneur that's thinks that, for a couple of $1 million, they can help save Australia's koala population. So, if that's possible, that's great. Anybody. But nevertheless, it's right down to the grassroots level of those community koala carers, which are just as important. And our approach with the vaccine, while we talk about doing big trials, every single koala matters. So theoretically, every single koala that gets the vaccine, hopefully the same as you getting your COVID vaccine, it matters to every single one. So it's at all levels. So thanks for that.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for joining us today, talking about the new and innovative ways that we're applying vaccine development and vaccine rollout, which, we're all very familiar with now, to help protect our most beloved and endemic wildlife.
That's great, Claire. Thanks for everything.
Across Australia on the Community Radio Network, you're listening to Lost in Science. People who have listened to our show for a while will know we usually make a big deal every year about National Science Week, because we like to spread the word and get people involved in science. But National Science Week is not the only big event in the science calendar each year, and we should do more to promote some of the other science red letter days that come around annually. And one of these is coming up soon on the 10th of November, as it does every year. This day, not the 10th of November, which obviously does come around every year.
Sure.
Do either of you know what that might be on the 10th of November, which comes every year?
It certainly doesn't stick out in my mind as a day that I've ever celebrated or that I remember.
Well, it is the World Science Day for Peace and Development.
Wow. World.
Yeah, the World Science Day for Peace and Development.
Yeah, just for peace and development. That rules out a lot of science, I think you'll find.
Well, only a very small part of it, but that's I'll get to that in a minute actually, about science for peace and development. This is a day that was declared by UNESCO in 2001 with the aim of promoting science as the basis for the advancement of peaceful societies around the world, which is admittedly a pretty lofty goal and also a big responsibility for science to take on. I don't know if we can be solely responsible science for making peaceful societies around the world. But look, somebody's got to do it, obviously. I think there's a reasonable and rational basis for the idea, and the specific goals of the World Science Day for Peace and Development are: 2, strengthen public awareness of the role of science for peaceful and sustainable societies. Pretty good goal.
It's a good goal.
Promote national and international solidarity for shared science between countries.
Okay. Yeah, that's also...
So, we'll get our scientists together and they can share all of their science with each other. Renew national and international commitment for the use of science for the benefit of societies.
Great.
And also draw attention to the challenges faced by science in raising support for the scientific endeavour. And I think that's also a big one there. And, I think if we have seen anything in the last year, it's that there's a big discrepancy between how scientists think about science and how nearly everyone else thinks about science. So we kind of got to close that gap, I guess, and pull people together and say science can help with nearly everything that we need to do to have happy and healthy societies. So each year has a specific theme to focus the day. That's the World Science Day for Peace and Development, just in case you've forgotten already. Last year was Science for and with Society, which I've got to say, that's kind of a bit, yeah. It doesn't really have any punch to it, I've got to admit. And that was prompted by the COVID-19 crisis itself. So it was aimed to encourage discussion about how nations could help each other and themselves cope with the pandemic. So all of those goals of, cooperation and sharing information, all that, which actually worked pretty well with COVID. I think there was a lot of sharing of information, and even people relaxed their commercial attachment to information and shared openly all sorts of data and science and promoted scientific information quite openly. So the theme for this year is the future of STI, impacts on education, skills, and work.
What does STI stand for here?
Yeah. So in some contexts, STI has quite a different meaning to what's intended here. So STI can quite commonly stand for sexually transmitted infection. And while that may be a great idea for a World Science Day, I mean, absolutely that is a worthy cause.
That's important.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely important, not just for humans, obviously for koalas as well.
For koalas.
And other species.
Yeah.
But the STI they're talking about here is science, technology, and innovation. And I do have to say, can you guys get a new acronym? Because this is going to lead to some confusion. But
or maybe just switch them around.
Yeah.
Science, innovation, technology. Sit.
Sit.
The
and all these,
sit.
Every dog in the world just obeys.
Yeah.
Now, look, the reason behind this is the increasing...
The reason is they're trying to get the kids interested, and if they call it the future of STIs, then the kids will be snickering behind their hands. That's a good idea, really.
Possibly. Hopefully the kids take STIs seriously. We'd have to talk to people in the health departments around the world to find out if that's true. But the reason that they're focusing on, and the focus, I should say, is this impacts on education, skills, and work. So the increasing automation of labour in almost every industry. So obvious things like administration, office work, being changed by the use of online tools and connectivity, I think is the word that gets used a lot. So the internet has basically changed a lot of work around the world. And that's an obvious impact of technology. But even things like industrial work, you've got your industrial robots that put cars together and things like that. But a lot of jobs are being taken over by increasingly complex and capable machines, and technology is changing the face of work. Even things like bricklaying and construction are on the cusp of being changed by robotic systems. I've seen videos of bricklaying robots that can lay, can build a brick wall in, a couple of hours compared to a few days.
Wow.
There's a lot quicker ways of doing things. And even 3D printing of buildings using available materials. So there's these gigantic house-sized 3D printers which use concrete as the material, cement as the material, and they can make rooms of any shape and size and put them together based on a 3D model in a computer program. So even things like that, which you'd think, well, how could you possibly do that? Well, we can do that, and we're starting to find ways of doing these things which don't involve the amount of labour that they used to involve. So this technology is actually effectively putting people out of work. So that's obviously going to have an impact on education as well, because learning trades and workplace skills is a fundamental part of the education system around the world. So work will be reflected in the education system, and the education systems themselves are going to be affected by the same technologies that are changing the work. So the teachers' jobs and all the administration in running these educational institutions are also going to change as well. So it's a huge kind of topic that they've approached here. Now, how people will cope with these changes is kind of what this World Science Day for Peace and Development is all about. It's all about what are the effects on people, and the conversations around how to best prepare people for these changes and protect them from possible detrimental effects, like having to retrain after doing the same job for most of your career, or literally coping with lost employment because you get replaced by a robot or some new program. Even this has already happened in my lifetime. I remember, the shift from people advertising things in newspapers meant that there was a whole crew of people who'd put classified ads in newspapers. They don't exist anymore because it's all online and you can put your own ad up and you don't have to pay someone to do that. So there's all sorts of weird little niche things that we probably don't even think about. That's the kind of discussions that they're hoping people will have in relation to these technological advancements. And I think the idea of having an international day to focus on the impact of science and technology on human society is a great idea. And I think we should promote the World Day for Peace and Development, or World Science Day for Peace and Development, because we do need to talk about this stuff. We can't just let it happen. So, and the other thing, and I said I'd come back to this, science is basically trying to get a better understanding of the world and how it works, and the universe and how it works. Technology is a practical application of that improved understanding, and that's where we start to come into the human side of things, is when we can know all we want about the universe and how it works and the world and how it works, but when we turn that science knowledge into technology, it starts to have an impact on the real world, and that's where we live. So that's where we kind of have to look at the boundary between science and technology and the boundary between technology and society, and kind of have these discussions. And I think science can be pushed forward by curiosity. A lot of science, we're just curious. We want to know how things work. Why does this happen this way? And that's what is kind of the driving force behind science. Technology tends to be led more by economic forces, which don't necessarily have people's best interests at heart. They are just trying to make the quickest buck possible out of this amazing new technology, which is perfectly reasonable. That's how businesses operate and always have. But the intersection of science with technology and the intersection of technology with society is, I think, something worth talking about. Whether it brings about world peace is another thing, but I think it's worth giving it a try.
And that's it for another episode of Lost in Science. Lost in Science is recorded for 3CR in Melbourne on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and it airs across Australia on the Community Radio Network with the support of the Community Broadcasting Foundation. We would love you to get in touch with us. You can email us at lostinsci@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook, we're Lost in Science on 3CR, or on Twitter, where we're at Lost in Science 1. You can find us on your favourite podcast app, where if you get the chance, please give us a good rating and review, as that will raise us up in the search rankings so other people can find the science. Or you can listen to us however you listen to us now, where at the same time every week, Claire, Stu and Chris get
Lost in Science!
Thanks for listening to a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online.